Greetings and welcome to the Agency Accelerator series from Convert.com. I want to welcome you to another episode of our webinar series. I'm Morgan Lake and I'm the Engagement Scout at Convert.com. So we've all been through this, optimization campaigns that aren't doing well. Numbers are just not where you'd like them to be. There's panic, we invest more money in the testing process or go chasing better tech, or even worse, we're listening to quote unquote gurus and dubious advice. So today we want to think a little bit differently. We want to think outside the box. We want to think really hard about how client-agency collaboration and communication can be a game changer. And who better to do this than Matt Skaisbrook, the founder of We Teach CRO. Welcome to Agency Accelerator, Matt.
Thank you. Excuse me.
Nice to have you today. And before I hand this over to Matt, for our new listeners, I just want to bring you up to speed on a bit of housekeeping. The replay will hit your inbox in about 24 to 36 hours. We absolutely love questions, so please do use the chat box to the right, on the right of the window, and fire away, and we'll take those questions once the presentation is done. So thank you for attending, and thank you for listening, and that's all I have. So Matt, take it away and give us that missing puzzle piece to profitable optimization.
Sure. Thanks, Morgan. Cool. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. A little bit of background about me. So I've been working client side and agency side in CRO roles since 2012, and I now own and operate the specialist CRO agency We Teach CRO. We've basically set up to create long-term, strong relationships with our clients, and that really means thinking about what our clients need and want. And in some cases, that isn't to outsource their work forever. It's to help them build a team of their own in-house. And so that's sort of an area that we specialize in that perhaps other CRO agencies don't. We have clients across the UK and a few in Germany as well. And today, I really want to share with you how we've built those partnerships to ensure the best possible outcomes, both for us and for our clients. So to set the scene a little bit, we want to start with a few facts about CRO programs from our experience. So firstly, the longevity of a CRO program relies on generating a return. One of the greatest things about CRO as an agency or operating it as a service is that it's so easy to show a client that there are financial gains, genuine attributable ROI from the work that we do. Unfortunately, the reverse is obviously also true. It is very easy to see when a program is not generating the return that the client is looking for. But either way, that generating that return is what is going to keep that CRO program going, going to keep the investment in that CRO program. Secondly, the effectiveness of a CRO program almost always grows with time. So the more tests that you can run, assuming that the hypotheses that you're putting together are strong, the more tests that you can run, the more that you're going to learn, and therefore the more effective your program should be. And finally, the effectiveness of a CRO partnership almost always grows with time. So not only the individual tests that you're running, but the work that goes on between an agency and a client should improve in its effectiveness over time as well. You get to know each other better, you get to know processes better, you understand the sites that you're working on, the visitors that go to those sites, the levers of conversion for those sites. And so the longer that you can keep a partnership going, the more effective you're going to be. To use an example from one of our own clients, one of our earliest clients, actually, they in their first year with us, they generated about 1.2 million in incremental revenue over the first 12 months. And then in the first quarter of their second year with us, they had already hit 600,000. So half of what they'd generated in the first year. So, excuse me. So looking at those facts, what does it mean? So essentially, we're saying that the effectiveness of a CRO program is tied to its longevity. The longer that you can keep a program running with the client, the more effective that program is going to be. And that means happy clients, and that means happy agencies. But there is an argument to say that this setup could be the same for any client agency relationship. So what makes CRO relationships special? And for us, we believe that CRO agencies should be in the ideal position to deliver this mutual happiness. And here's why that is. So this is a definition of CRO. There are many of them, but this is one that we like. Conversion rate optimization is about solving problems on a website by understanding your website visitors. By understanding them, you can influence their decisions and build a relationship over a longer period. Now consider this definition. CRO partnerships are about solving problems for your clients by understanding who those clients are. By understanding them, you can influence their decisions and build a relationship over a longer period. And for us, this is why CRO practitioners, whether agency side or client side, should be the best at long-term sustainable partnerships. The skills that we are using to optimize websites or apps or any sort of user process are the same skills that we need to optimize partnerships between agencies and clients. So once we'd come to this realization, it led us to ask the next key question: what makes for a strong partnership? And you could go to 1,000 different people with this question, and you would get a lot of different answers. You know, you'd have honesty, trust, shared interests, shared experiences, and that list could go on for quite some time. But when we looked at this question from our perspective, we distilled it down to a single statement. Strong partnerships rely on the removal of potential flashpoints. And realistically, this is the same for personal partnerships as it is for business ones. We gravitate towards people with similar views and experiences, as it reduces the likelihood of those flashpoints and therefore creates a strong bond. But focusing on business for now, the next natural question, of course, is, well, what are those flashpoints? So again, we sat down as a team and said, okay, what are these flashpoints? Yeah. And we came up with 5 that encompass pretty much everything that could possibly go wrong. And I would say that virtually any CRO practitioner, agency, client has probably complained about or been complained to for each of these areas: quality, speed, costs, processes, and results. So if you look at each of those, the test plan isn't detailed enough. That's a quality issue. The build of that test was delivered too late. That's a speed issue. Those extra hours cost too much. Again, a financial issue. The process that you're using doesn't work for us, or the results have been below expectation. And having worked in CRO for quite some time, I've heard each of these on multiple occasions. So what we then wanted to do was take each of these flashpoints and break them down and work out how were we going to ensure that these flashpoints didn't bring up major issues for us. So starting with quality. So for us, quality is about exceptional service delivery, and that is in every aspect of service delivery: documentation, test build, responsiveness of client-facing staff, and estimation. So when we're predicting that a test will be delivered by, how accurate are we in that estimation? The other two elements for quality for us are skills and time. Now, if you're running a CRO program, be that as a client or as an agency, there has to be an assumption of skills. The assumption that you have the skills required to deliver a high quality service. But where the time aspect comes in is that the skills alone aren't enough. It's really about the effective deployment of those skills. The most skillful person in the world, given 10 seconds to deliver something, isn't going to deliver something that's very good. Therefore, the skill level, whilst it is a given, whilst it is something you must have, the only way you're going to get quality is by ensuring that whoever is working on that service has the appropriate amount of time to effectively deploy their skills. So how this works in practice for us is that we make sure that we don't have too many client accounts sat with the same member of staff. And I know that might sound like a really obvious thing to say, but as an agency, that kind of comes down to how you're looking at managing profit. If you want to be really profitable in the short term, you load up staff with a lot of accounts. In the end, you're paying the same amount for that member of staff, but you're giving them more work, and therefore you're making short-term profit. If you want to make long-term profit, you need to look at the quality of what you do, and that quality means fewer accounts across individual staff members to give them the time to effectively deploy their skills. The next one of our flashpoints is speed, and speed was a difficult one for us to think about. So we firstly set about defining what speed means in CRO service delivery. And really, speed is about delivery at the right time, not at the fastest time. So there are often a lot of interdependencies in CRO. So tests that are currently running on the site, client sprint cycles, paid media campaigns that we need to link in with, and therefore it is more around timeliness than it is around getting something out the door. If you deliver a test to a client 2 weeks before that test can launch, have you actually gained anything at all? Now, speed is also often seen as the reverse of quality. So deliver too fast and it won't be quality, and delivering absolute perfection would take an infinite amount of time. So to make sure that both sides of the CRO relationship understand the importance of timeliness over speed. And finally, under promise and over deliver. So this is often seen as an agency thing. Agencies should under promise and over deliver. But for us, it's a relationship thing. If both sides of a relationship, both sides of a partnership do this, everyone is happier. And happier people work with each other, not for each other. And that idea of a genuine partnership with client side and agency staff working with each other is something that we are particularly upfront about. Even in some of our sort of sales collateral, we call this out quite early, that we as an agency don't want to work for you. We want to work with you. And we want to make sure that any prospective clients know that that is the way that we want to operate from moment one. Costs. So costs are, of course, an inevitable flashpoint of any business partnership. But the nature of CRO programs themselves means that the smooth operation around billing and invoicing are even more important, because in CRO we need to maintain momentum of testing. We need to allow for iteration so that both of those things can help to create the culture of testing that really helps to maximize the returns from any CRO program. And as we saw earlier on, those returns are essential for the longevity of a program, and the longevity is then essential for the greater returns that come on further down the line. And this is kind of where we started to see the traditional hours, days, retainer model for agencies falling down, and really not rewarding enthusiasm. Clients who really wanted to create momentum, work iteratively, build this culture of testing, were being hamstrung because they were running out of hours or days within their retainer contract. And then you have commercial discussions that have to take place mid-contract for additional time, and that is pretty much a surefire way of souring any positive relationship that you've started to build there, as clients can often feel like their tests or their output is being held hostage over hours. You know, no more work is going to get done until you agree to do more and pay more for these hours. On top of this, in any hours or days arrangement, it's the agency that has to own the tracking and proactive management of those hours. So in essence, the agency themselves, by working on this model, is essentially creating their own overheads. And this can be one of two ways. One, if they're not recharging the hours spent on doing this at tracking and proactive management, then they essentially have non-billable time that is an overhead for the agency. Or worse, and what, to be honest, is more often the case, they actually spend a client's billable hours managing their hours. And I can say I have seen this firsthand in agencies and consultancies that I've worked in prior to starting We Teach CRO, that hours are being spent managing hours, which for us was crazy, to be honest. And whichever way this is being done, you know, whether those hours are being recharged or they're not being recharged, it just didn't feel like the sort of collaborative, partnership driven environment that we wanted for ourselves or for our clients. Now, the next thing that I'm going to say is probably the most contentious point of this whole webinar, even to the point where I considered not including it prior to today, but decided that actually it is relevant, very relevant to the way that we do things and why we do them this way. So we looked at the traditional hours days model of retainers, and essentially decided that it was a lazy method of gauging what a client should pay. is essentially using a measure of inputs to gauge costs when really a client is spending money to achieve outputs. So to put that in some context, whether a test took 1 day to build or 5 days, the results of that test, the outputs of that test don't change. And we wanted to build our agency around outputs, those things that our clients are actually paying us for. You know, they're not paying us to spend X number of hours on a test. They're paying us to have that test built so that they can benefit from the increased conversion, the increased additional revenue, the actual business outputs for why they're investing in CRO in the first place. So once we'd established that, we decided that we wanted to offer our clients a joint ownership of throughput. So without going into sort of extensive detail on how this works, we essentially use a concurrent project model where the client has access to unlimited resources in terms of time spent, as long as they provide their sign off at key stages of the test development process. The number of concurrent projects that they have dictates the number of resources that can be used on their account at any one time, and the only breaks in work are when the client needs to provide sign off. So essentially, the faster they work with us to get the approvals required to move a test into the next phase, the greater that their throughput is going to be. So for us overall, this means no more hours reporting or the associated overheads that come with that. No more unscheduled downtime caused by a lack of hours, and no more unexpected costs to top up hours, mid-month. And we found that to be incredibly beneficial. It can be a difficult model to explain first off, because everyone is so used to the hours and days retainer models where they understand the inputs that are going in. But once we explain to prospective clients that this is about maximizing their outputs, and in the first few months they see the benefits of why we do things this way. The fourth flashpoint is processes. And processes, in the new sort of agile driven world that we live in, it's kind of become a bit of an ugly word, I guess. But for us, processes are essential because they mitigate the chance of surprises. And really, it's surprises that generate flashpoints. When you get something that you were not expecting, that is when relationships can fall in a difficult direction. Our processes are clear, defined, documented, and shared. And really, without that sharing side of things, without our clients knowing exactly why we do things the way we do and the phases that we go through, processes themselves really aren't much good at reducing surprises. It has to be a process that everyone buys into and shares. Justification of processes is another key element within here, and this really links back to our to the last section around costs and the hours and days model of retainers, because in that model, clients might suspect that certain elements of a process are there to generate billable hours. I have heard that question, and it wasn't true. I'm not suggesting that the people who work on those models do that. I'm virtually certain that they don't. But it generates a suspicion that it might be something that's going on. In a concurrent project model like ours, the emphasis is on us not to create unnecessary work for ourselves. And that means that we've never really had to work too hard to justify the stages of the processes that we go through. And finally, constant reference to the process. You know, what stage has just been completed? What stage are we in now? What stage will we be moving to next? And this means that everyone involved, even those who are, you know, peripherally involved, they learn the process faster, and that helps to further reduce the likelihood of surprises happening. Some of our longer term clients have actually started to feed into the basic process that we have to help add some elements that are specific to them, which has helped to create, you know, an even stronger sense of that joint process rather than one that's being enforced on them. A process they help to create helps to reduce the chance of surprises in areas of their business that aren't directly involved in CRO, you know, to the point where, you know, the director knows the stages that we're going to go through. Finally, on our list of Flashpoints, results. So as we all know, this is the hardest of all to avoid. With all the best will in the world, the best the best skills, the best application of those skills, all the processes that you need, we aren't always right. We found that if we can agree on goals, first off, you know, what are we hoping to achieve? You know, is the client looking for 5-to-1 ROI? Is it 10-to-1 ROI? Is it 50-to-1 ROI? You know, whatever that number is, we need to know what that is up front to make sure that when we think we're doing a good job, we're actually doing a good job. You know, we're actually meeting or exceeding what the client is hoping to achieve. We also need to agree on reporting and how we're going to report, particularly from a financial or incremental revenue perspective. You know, does the client's business talk about monthly incremental? Do they talk about quarterly incremental? Do they talk about annual incremental? And then reflecting that in the reporting that we provide to them, just to make sure that when we are getting those big results, when we are getting those that return on investment that the client's asking for, we make it as easy as possible for them to disseminate that information internally in a language that the business is used to using. Finally, emphasize that this is about testing. Like I said, we don't have all of the answers. You know, if we did, we would not be in the business of testing. We'd just tell you what to do, and making sure that happens as early as possible within the process. You know, we're not soothsayers. You know, we don't have absolutely every answer out there. This is about testing. This is about learning and building on those on those learnings as you go through. And lastly, longevity. Yeah, educating around longevity. You know, as we mentioned at the start, the longer that a program runs, the more effective it will be. Don't get disheartened if your first few tests don't deliver the multi-million-pound wins that you've read in everyone's case studies. You know, this is it is a discipline. It is not a project. You know, the longer that it runs, the better that it will be. So how do we summarize all of that? So firstly, effective CRO partnerships require longevity. You know, effective CRO builds over time. You know, that time is what you need. How do you get that time? The longevity requires the strong relationships. You know, people work with people. They don't work with businesses. You know, and you get the best out of any partnership by making sure that the people want to work together. You know, not one for the other, but together as a team. And those strong relationships require avoiding flashpoints wherever possible. So obviously we've given a rundown of the flashpoints from our perspective. Those are the ones that we see in your businesses, your agencies. Those flashpoints may not be the same for you, but it is well worth sitting down, with as wide a team as possible to work out what flashpoints you have, which ones have come up over over the last 3 months, over the last 6 months, over the last 12 months. What could you have done to have avoided those? Is it as simple as how you talk to a client on a daily basis? Is it that you need to have more regular touch points with them? Or is it something more functional around the processes that you have? But know what they are, know what those flashpoints are for you, and start taking steps to mitigate the risk of those. And you will find that your relationships will get stronger. Your average tenure for a client will increase, and your overall effectiveness as a CRO agency or as a CRO in-house team will increase because of those things. So that is everything from me at this point. So Morgan, is this a good time
Excellent.
to talk questions?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your brain with us. I think there were a lot of nuggets in there. There are a few questions in the side chat room. So Joseph has a question. He's talking about, he says, interesting concept and framework. What about internal controls and security?
Internal control. So I'm not sure I 100% understand what the questions are, what the question is asking.
Internal controls, I'm not sure either. I wonder, Joseph, can you expand on that a little bit? Nate also has a question. He says, how do you calculate incremental revenue of testing that shows tangible ROI? Yeah.
So our incremental revenue. So basically, there are numerous ways of looking at this. And as I mentioned during the results section, this is something that you absolutely need to agree with your clients or as part of a wider business as to how you are going to claim incremental revenue or project incremental revenue forwards. So the first method is what we refer to it as in-test revenue. So we've run an A/B test. The control has generated £50,000 worth of sales, and the experiment has generated £60,000 worth of sales. So at a basic level, you are saying that we have gained in the period of the test £10,000. The other method of doing it is to extrapolate over a longer period. So if we take those two examples again, so that test ran for a period of 1 month, and your client wants to project incremental revenue over the course of, say, a quarter. So what we'd look at then is say, okay, so over a quarter, the control would generate 3 times 50K, therefore 150, and the experiment would generate 3 times 60K, therefore 180K over that period. Therefore, the potential incremental revenue over a quarter would be 30K. I hope that answers your question, Nate.
Very nice, thorough answer. I see Joseph got back to us. He said his question is, he means process related to internal controls and security as flashpoints?
Yeah, no worries. It makes much more sense now. Yes, they are ones for us. They haven't been too major, which is why they're not on sort of the 5 core ones. We do find with larger clients, particularly with obviously GDPR being looming in the distance, and everyone's sort of flapping a little bit about that at the moment, that internal controls have become stronger, and that is where we've had to where we've had to sit down with clients, go through the current process, particularly sign-off wise that we have, and make sure that the right people at their end in terms of sort of the governance of the website are there to provide their sign off in a way that they never really did before. And I have to say, at the time, I was a little bit skeptical. I felt that it was perhaps a little bit overkill. But having done it for the best part of 6 months with this client now, I understand why it is done that way, and it does make a lot of sense. Really, it offered us an opportunity to speak to parts of the business we might not otherwise have done, and get them, I guess, genuinely interested and excited about what we were doing. Security is a potential flashpoint. I'd say for us, it's not a major one, and it all really comes down to what is the risk. You know, most CRO tools are essentially bringing in external JavaScript, and we do have some clients who do not allow that to happen in certain areas of their site. So, you know, financial services is a big one. You know, obviously anything that's going on within logged in areas is often out of bounds. But yeah, I guess security for us has never been a major one. We've never had a client come back and say, you know, the external JavaScript that you're using has been compromised and caused an issue on our site. But I think this, you know, Joseph's question comes back to, you know, so what I was saying at the end of, in the summary there, that to do this yourselves in your own assessment of your own business is to sit down and work out what those flashpoints are for you, you know, and it doesn't mean that in, you know, 12 months time, if we did this same session again, those might be in there for us then, you know, we do have to constantly assess what those potential flashpoints are and whether we need to be doing something to help mitigate those.
Perfect. Okay, thanks for the in-depth answer. JR wants to know, when should you test a design and when should you just implement a best practice idea?
Yeah, we get this one a lot. So there are, we do a piece of work called a 6-step CRO strategy here, where essentially we apply our methodology to look over a client site, and it's often one that's either brand new, you know, sort of pre-launch, or has limited data for it. So, you know, so the standard data analysis side is difficult to do. And in that, we split out the difference between recommendations and test ideas. So that is essentially what JR is saying between, you know, when should you be testing and when should you be changing things. So ideally, you'd test everything that you did, you know, in an ideal world. Unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world, and therefore it is impractical to do that. Implementing changes that aren't going to have a functional impact on how a visitor goes through a process, you can often get away with best practice ideas. Personally, I hate the term best practice. We put visitor analysis at the core of everything that we do, understanding or doing our best to understand who a person is, you know, and what they require when they visit a site. And it's very difficult to apply best practice to people, to individual people. I guess it also depends on, you know, are you talking best practice as in, I need to make sure that somebody knows what's in their basket at all times? You know, that I wouldn't class as best practice. That I would class as, you know, an e-commerce fundamental that people need to know that, you know, do they need to know roughly how long delivery is going to take? That again is a fundamental. When should you test? It kind of comes down to how much traffic and conversion volume that you have. You know, if you've got a lot, then I would recommend testing as much as you can. If you've got a limited amount, then you're going to need to pick and choose the tests that you're going to run, because they're going to take, 4, 5, 6 weeks maybe to come to any sort of statistical conclusion. So to try and wrap that up into something that's going to provide a solid answer for JR on that one, you're going to have to look at it for each individual case that you have. If you cannot get enough traffic or conversion volume to get a statistical reason, don't run a test, because you're going to waste your time.
Okay, great. Deb is asking, how does your agency measure B2B ROI when the sales cycle is long and sales are done offline with many business touch points and there's no e-commerce?
Yeah. So again, CRO is more popular, I would say, certainly within our clients with B2C and e-commerce. But when you're looking at say a business that does lead generation, through the website and then handles all the sales offline, really what you're looking at is how can you monetize that lead. So to give you an example, we work with a company where lead generation is their thing. They're still B2C rather than B2B, but their sales cycles are long because their sales are in 6 or 7 figures. So what we looked at is saying, okay, well, what is the average sale worth to you? So let's call that £100,000 for the sake of argument. Then we asked them, okay, what is your lead to sale rate? So that we can understand, out of all the leads that we generate out of the website, what percentage of them go on to make a sale. So let's call that 1%, again for the sake of easy maths. So that means that 1 in 100 people will go on post lead to spend £100,000. So that means that the lead itself is worth £1,000, assuming that the lead to sale rate stays static. So what we're basically saying then is that every lead that we generate has a value of £1,000 for you, and therefore that's how we essentially back calculate ROI for B2B or lead generation businesses. There is, of course, the added part of what we do around lead generation, where you're not just trying to increase the visit to lead rate, you're also trying to increase the lead quality rate, which should help push the lead to sale rate higher. So if that work is done and you are able to generate an increased lead to sale rate from the work that we're doing, we then go back and reassess what that value of a lead should be, and then again use that as the calculation method for ROI.
I think you can see the box on the right side there, Matt.
Yeah.
Nate has a question, a follow-up question on this. So he basically, yeah.
I'll read it. Bear with me, Nate.
Client talking about the experimentation results being theoretical, and have you encountered this type of result? A Flashpoint. How do you talk to them? How do you talk sense into them?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I have seen that question. So extrapolation is never going to be perfect, but as you say, the basic problem is businesses do not stand still long enough to guarantee that is going to come through. And we never talk about this is the incremental revenue that you will gain. We talk a lot about, based on the data of the test, if if the experiment was to run rather than the control, the lift that the projected lift that you would see is X. It sounds to me that this particular client or set of clients, they almost are struggling with seeing the value of CRO, and that perhaps there is a piece there to explain to them that experimentation results are they're not theoretical. They are based in fact. They are based on data that has been collected, and that there is always a percentage, chance. So when you get to the end of the test and, it says that your test is 95%, is at 95% statistical significance. So essentially meaning that if you ran that test 100 times, 95% you would get the same uplift result. So it is never perfect. If we got that particular, I've not had that since starting We Teach CRO. But if in the past, I would have said that if you don't feel like you can rely on the results of what you're doing, why are you investing in CRO? What value did you think you were going to get when you signed the contract? And that might sound a little bit confrontational, but sometimes you really need to know what that is, because otherwise you're never going to be able to please that person if you don't know what they want out of it.
Interesting. So I actually had kind of a tangentially related question for you. So when you talked about processes, clear and defined processes, I wanted to know how transparent are you with clients on this? And have you ever turned down clients who weren't comfortable with this? So I think, like here, the response to Nate is, well, maybe, the client isn't the right fit because they don't get it. Have you ever turned down clients who didn't subscribe to how you want to run your business?
Yes, more than once. It doesn't tend to be on the process side of things, to be honest. The process has always been relatively straightforward, I guess, to explain to people. The biggest, I guess, difference we have with other agencies is the way that we price things, and the fact that we don't do hours. I have had prospects ask, can we have hours? And we've turned them down and said, I understand why you want it. We do understand. But we believe in measuring output. We don't believe in measuring input. We honestly don't believe that an hours model is best for generating the returns, the outputs that you want from CRO. And therefore, if hours is what you want, we can give you some other agencies that do work on that model who are very good at what they do, and go and talk to those guys, and they'll be happy to help you.
Right. Can't be everything to everyone, right?
Absolutely not.
Nate here says, thanks for your response. It's a tough conversation that typically is geared around pressure in their job to drive tangible ROI gains. We try to empathize and evangelize that it's better than guessing, which changes to me.
Yeah, he's right. It is difficult, and often you'll find that the person that you're talking to is under pressure, and you think that it's them being difficult, but it's not. It's the pressure that's being put up from maybe one or two levels above them. And so from our perspective, we would always try and get to the person that is putting that pressure on. And what does that person want? Usually you're looking at the difference between the person who signs the purchase orders or the invoices or whatever it is, versus the person that you speak to every day. And there is often an education side to do to someone who is more senior and isn't directly involved, because they don't really understand sometimes what it is that you do every day. And that this is this is a scientific discipline. It is not, it's not guesswork.
Right. So hence the name We Teach CRO.
As often as we can.
Excellent. Well, listen, it was a great pleasure to have you on today, Matt, and really looking forward to collaborating in the future. Just wanted to let everyone know that we're happy to pass this along. Like I mentioned, the recording will be in your inbox. The next webinar is on the 23rd, and that will be minimally viable redesigns by Elite SEM. Thank you so much for your time and your diligence with the questions, and have a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.